For more on this, let's turn to geopolitical analyst Eugene Chausovsky. He joins us from here in Washington. Eugene, great having you. And what's the current situation on the ground?
Right. So amid all of this diplomacy that your correspondents have mentioned, we have seen an uptick in fighting, particularly in the Kursk region, where we've seen Russia make some significant advances in recent weeks, and particularly over the last week or so, reclaiming a lot of that territory. I think over 80% that had been seized by Ukraine in previous months. But at the same time, we've also seen some major drone attacks by Ukraine into Russian territory. So just as this diplomacy is happening, there is quite an active situation on the ground right now, militarily as well.
And meanwhile, diplomacy seems to have evolved because the UK seems to be having a new role, right? How do you see that?
Right. So we've seen a lot of activity directly between the U.S. and Russia, as well as the U.S. and Ukraine over the past week, with different delegations going and meeting with one another over this proposed ceasefire agreement. So the Europeans have not been directly involved in those talks. This, I think, we can see from the UK, from France as well, making sure that they're not left out of those negotiations, and to make sure that that Ukraine has some security support, given this uptick in diplomacy, and it looks like we're moving faster and faster to some kind of agreement, as your correspondents have mentioned. But the Europeans want to make sure that Ukraine has the backing that it needs, and that they're at the table as well.
Yes, Eugene, I want to discuss France, because they have also stepped up their presence in these events, in these talks, and so on. Do you see a contrast, a difference between France and the UK?
I think for the most part, France and the UK have been, in lockstep here in terms of stepping up, to support Ukraine in the face of, a shifting U.S. position. There could be some tactical differences, I know, in terms of the type of ceasefire that was proposed. There were some differences between the UK and France, but overall, I think they're very much aligned in terms of getting a ceasefire in place, but also making sure that Ukraine has some, support, and has its defenses accounted for when that ceasefire comes to place. Now, whether that's from peacekeepers, continued military aid, things of that nature, I think we will see the UK and France acting jointly on those issues.
And Eugene, I want to talk about Germany, because they have shifted position lately, and it's the other big European partner that is missing in this probably three-legged, partnership. How do you see the role of Germany evolving?
Right. Well, Germany obviously has had its own political shifts recently with the elections and a change in leadership. But I think broadly speaking, Germany has been, along with the Europeans, the UK and France, trying to maintain that level of support for Ukraine. Germany is not going to necessarily be as active on the military front, at least directly, that countries like the UK and France will be. But whether it's economic support, particularly any kind of post-conflict reconstruction in Ukraine, we can expect to see Germany to be quite active there. So right now, the Europeans are trying to put on a united front here in terms of supporting Ukraine, and trying to get the US to the table as well.
Eugene Chausovsky, thank you very much. Great having you.